We've got this wonderful recipe today from the Universal Cook 1773. It's for a very interesting dish called a spring greens pie, and it's really good. Thanks for joining us today. So in the recipe book, this one's actually titled an herb pie. But it starts off with spinaches and lettuces. And since it's springtime, it's time to go out and gather different kinds of greens. This was a perfect opportunity for this time of year for us to do a little substitution. I do have some spinach in here, but I've also got stinging nettles. A wonderful green to put in a pie this time of year. You want to get these stinging nettles before they bloom, or else they don't taste nearly as well. Get those nice tender tops. And if you can get a brand new, just sprouted out of the ground stinging nettles, even better. And if you find them difficult to find, you might be able to find them at a local farmer's market. I've also picked a little bit, I don't have very much growing around here, but some ramps. Those would be a wonderful addition. We might not want too many ramps in here anyway. Dandelion greens, another great green to put in here. There's a little bit of plantain. We've got some parsley from the grocery store, along with spinach, lettuces. So any kind of spring greens that you have available to you, you can mix and match here to your heart's delight and make a wonderful pie. And that way you can change the flavors a little bit. This pie is going to be really easy to put together. First, I'm going to take our greens here and I'm going to wilt them in a little bit of butter in the frying pan. Let me get these wilted up real quick. Now this pie is technically called an herb pie, and it also has some sweet herbs in it. I got some sage, some rosemary. You could add some other sweet herbs if you'd like. Make sure to have plenty of greens for this. They're gonna wilt down as we cook them. So we're gonna fill up a decent sized pie, so have a good pile of greens. Another one of the ingredients in this herb pie are forcemeat balls, and forcemeat is a bit like ground meat. Actually, in the 18th century, they pulverized it until it was a paste, and this is another opportunity for us to spice this up a little bit. So I'm going to go ahead in my forcemeat balls and add a little bit of nutmeg, maybe some mace, some black pepper into this, and this is half pork, half beef. Again, that's, the forcemeat was this opportunity for you to kind of take your hand in and change the taste of this by spicing it up. We could even put some herbs in our forcemeat if we'd like. And these should be rolled up into little balls. So I am gonna pre-brown these, sort of pre-cook them. Because they're going in a pie, we're not sure exactly how much it's gonna get cooked. We wanna make sure they're at least cooked all the way through. I'm gonna go ahead and brown these in a little bit of suet. Now it's time to assemble our pie. I've got a couple of pie crusts here. We're gonna need a top and a bottom. And this is just a regular short paste. We do have an episode where we make short paste if you're interested in making your own pie. Let's put some greens in, and then we'll distribute our forcemeat around it. We've got our forcemeat balls. Here we are. And you can put in as more or less depending on how you want your herb pie. Let's put in the very last of our herbs on top. And it also says to have a good store of butter up on top here. We can add just a touch of our nutmeg, maybe some clove, some salt and pepper up on top of this. Probably don't need a lot. And now we want a top crust on this, and I've got another crust here, but we want to prepare this top crust with a little hole in the top. Put our top crust on. We will go ahead and put our little piece there, but we wanted to pre-cut that out. And now, of course, we're gonna do our outside crimping. There we go. This is ready to go into the earthen oven. If you're baking this in a modern kitchen, you'll want to bake it at 350 degrees, probably about 30 to 35 minutes. Watch it, it's really going to depend on how big your pie is. If you're baking this in an earthen oven, about the same time, maybe a half hour or so, it depends on the temperature of your oven. Make sure to swab the bottom and put this on a trivet so you don't burn the bottom of your pie. Make sure this oven isn't too hot. The last component of this pie is a leer, and it's made from 3 egg yolks and about the same amount of cream or milk. We're going to whisk these together. Once the pie is basically done, we're going to take it out of the oven, pry that little top off, and pour this into the pie. Put the little cap back on, and then set it back in the oven for maybe 5 or 10 minutes. It won't take that long, and this will solidify. Well, we took the pie out of the oven after it's 5 or 10 minutes with the leer in there. It probably could have stayed a little bit longer to solidify that. It depends on how hot your pie is and what you really want here. That leer really keeps it nice and moist. So the pie is done though. It looks really good. It smells wonderful right out of the oven. I let it cool down enough so that I could slice it and it wouldn't just fall apart. So let's give this a try. And of course we've got our meatballs in here. We've got all these different kinds of greens mixed in, some wonderful herbs. So let's see what it tastes like. This is tremendous. There's so many different layers of those greens and their flavors in there. So, you know, maybe if you want some kind of flavors more than another, you can arrange that green mixture, the different kinds of greens. The stinging nettles are wonderful in here, and they're actually so very good for you. They can sound scary that they're stinging nettles, but they are very tasty. And you get these wonderful, every once in a while, you get that little Forcemeat meatball in there that kind of surprises you. If you really want to make this without it, you definitely could. There's so much here flavor-wise that those aren't necessarily needed, but they're like a little surprise as you're eating. So again, this recipe comes from The Universal Cook by John Townsend, written in about 1773, a great cookbook for the 18th century, full of great stuff. He was, what was it? He was the owner of the Greyhound Tavern and also a cook to His Grace the Duke of Manchester, a very talented person who put together this cookbook. We do this sort of reproduction print version of it. You can find it on our website. Great cookbook. I'll make sure to put a link down in the description section. This is a wonderful pie for this time of year. And even if you can only just get into the supermarket and not, go out into your yard and find interesting greens, it's still such a great one for this time of year. You really should try this one out. It is really good. And I want to thank you for coming along today as we savor the flavors and the aromas of the 18th century.